Hi, I'm Rahel Philipose and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express News Show. In this episode, we talk about students in Karnataka preferring eggs over bananas and chikki in midday meals. We also talk about a man who was arrested for sharing a cartoon of West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. But first, we talk about the Indian Army. For the very first time, women officers in the Army are all set to be cleared for the rank of colonel, which will allow them to command units and troops in their respective arms and services. These are 108 women who were chosen by a special selection board out of the 244 that were being considered for the position. This development comes after the historic Supreme Court order that finally allowed women to serve more than 14 years in the army. In this segment, the Indian Express's Amrita Nayak Dutta joins us to talk about it. So Amrita, could you begin by talking about the significance of women in the army now being able to hold the rank of colonel? Why is that a big deal?
So why this is important is because this grants women parity with their male counterparts. Earlier, women were engaged with the army. They had a limited period career in the army because they were short service commission officer. In the sense, they could at max serve for 14 years and after that they had to compulsorily retire. So what happens if you retire after serving 14 years in the army? You can at max become a lieutenant colonel. To become a colonel, you have to serve minimum 16 to 18 years. So women never got that opportunity because they were short service commission officers. So now when the Supreme Court gave this landmark judgment in 2020, saying that women will now be eligible for permanent commission, in the sense they will be able to have a longer career in the army if they qualify for it. In that case, women will become colonels and as a result, there would be more promotion avenues. So this move, the women becoming colonel, grants parity with the male counterparts. That is why it is significant.
Okay, and can you tell us what becoming a colonel allows one to do in the army?
So colonel in the army is a very coveted position because it is the one position where you are assessed for your leadership. It shows that the army is recognizing that you can be a leader. I must mention here that there are two streams, the JAG, which is a legal stream, and the Army Education Corps, where women did get permanent commission in 2008. But having said that, in all the other streams, like intelligence, like engineers, women had to retire after serving a term of 14 years. As a result, they could not become a colonel. But when you become a colonel, you're directly interacting with the troops on ground. So effectively, it's an acknowledgement that you can be a leader. So that makes this rank very significant.
Right. And you mentioned that this could only happen after the landmark order by the Supreme Court in 2020, which allowed women to serve in the army for more than just 14 years. So could you talk about that a little bit and what it meant for women who wanted to pursue a career in the army?
It was a huge thing for women because they have been fighting a long legal battle over it for the last 15 years. So what happened was they felt undervalued because they were serving in junior positions for a long time. And when the time came to show their leadership skills, actually, they had to retire. So it meant a huge thing for women because they would want to get promoted in a service where they're working and actually be leaders in that. So they never got this opportunity earlier. Having said that, I must mention here that the army in 2019, it changed its rules to ensure that permanent commission is given to all women who join later, in the sense who join from the next batch. But this did not allow permanent commission retrospectively. But Supreme Court, in its judgment, said all women, even retrospectively, will be eligible for permanent commission. So when you're serving longer in the army, obviously your promotion avenues open up. You will be able to opt for permanent commission, and if selected with your ACRs and with your merit, you will be able to command troops, you will be able to command a brigade, and there is no end to that.
Okay, got it. And Amrita, are women able to hold similar positions in the Navy and the Air Force as well?
There is a beginning there as well. So women officers have been inducted into all branches of the Navy, and they will also be eligible for permanent commission in the future. So once they do that, They can command shore-based units as well as they can command ships and air squadrons as well. Similarly, for the Air Force, they have opened all branches for women officers, including the fighter stream and the newly launched weapon system branch. So they will also be eligible to command units in the future as they complete the required number of years in services.
And as far as the army is concerned, can women be sent into combat in a situation where they are fighting on the ground?
So this debate has been going on for a long time, but yes, I must tell you that the core combat arms, which is the infantry, the mechanized infantry, and the armored corps, in these three core combat arms, women are still not allowed today. And a lot of this stems from the fact that male officers who've earlier become prisoners of war, they have been tortured by the enemy countries and all. So this is a reason why women are today not allowed in the core combat arms. But having said that, women are allowed in the combat support arms. For instance, engineers, for instance, artillery. The army chief recently announced that women will now be able to join the Corps of Artillery, which is a combat support arm. So what happens is, even though they cannot get into the core combat arms, but when you are in a combat support arms, even then you serve on the front lines. You have to go put a mine, come back. So women do stay at the front lines, even in combat support arms. But yes, when you say purely combat, women are still not allowed in these three combat arms.
And Amrita, right now, how many women are currently servicing in the army?
So if you consider the medical stream, the doctors, nurses, it could be more than 10,000. But if you talk about the pure arms, then the army has the largest number of women officers as of now, which is over 1,700. Then there are over 1,600 women officers in the Air Force and about 559 in the Navy. So this is as per the government data which was submitted to the Parliament last year.
And could you talk about the kind of roles that women in the army can opt for in other countries? And how does that compare to India?
Yeah, so other countries, all major countries, including the United States, UK, Russia, Israel, they allow women in core command positions of their national armed forces. And in India, I would just like to mention that there are about 10 streams where women are allowed. This includes, of course, the Judge Advocate General, the JAG, or the legal stream, and the Army Education Corps, where they anyway had permanent commission in 2008. But apart from that, there are engineers, signals, Army Air Defense, Intelligence Corps, Army Service Corps, Army Ordnance Corps, and electrical and mechanical engineers. These are some of the other streams where women are allowed permanent commission.
Next, we talk about eggs in Karnataka's midday meals. Karnataka is a state where the inclusion of eggs under the midday meal scheme was vehemently opposed by political and religious leaders. But despite the opposition, the state government introduced eggs last year. And now, recent data accessed by the Indian Express shows that children are choosing to eat eggs over bananas or chikki. In this segment, the Indian Express's Sanath Prasad joins my colleague Utsa Sarmin to talk about this data and how it may impact the state's future policies.
So, Sanath, our data provided by the Department of Public Instruction, which is also known as the Department of School Education in Karnataka, highlights an interesting fact about midday meals in the state. Can you tell us what the data shows?
So, when we collected the data from the School Education Department of Karnataka, this is as of December 2022, on, the preference of eggs, chikkis, and banana, which is the special nutrition food that the Karnataka government implemented across all districts in July, we found out that predominantly most of the children actually chose eggs. That's almost, say, out of the 47 lakh students in class 1 to 8 in government schools, almost 38 lakh students preferred egg, followed by bananas and then followed by chikkis. So this was actually goes on to say that, children prefer more of protein, calcium, which they find in eggs compared to other nutrition food like, say, banana and chikki. So then this was based on after a pilot study in Kalyan, Karnataka region, that's including Ballari, Koppal, Kalburgi, Yadgir, where we see a lot of students who are malnourished. And the body mass index of these students are very low. So then that's when the Karnataka government decided that, they wanted to include eggs as part of the midday meals in government schools.
And the pilot study you were just mentioning, it took place early last year, right? After which eggs were included in the meals?
Yes. So, Utsa, this study was actually conducted by a 15-member team by the Karnataka State Rural Development and Panchayat Raj University, which included, say, nutritionists, education experts, government officials, food nutritionists, psychologists, and other experts. So they conducted a study where, they took two districts, say Yadgir and Gadag. So they took students who consumed eggs in Yadgir and those who consumed banana and chikki in Gadag. So what they found from students of Yadgir is that their body mass index improved more than their peers in Gadag who did not consume eggs. Whereas those who consumed eggs in Yadgir, their body mass index increased, their weight increased. Whereas from those in Gadag, there was an increase, but it's very considerable compared to those in Yadgir who consumed eggs. So based on this study, the school education department felt that they should extend the program to address the malnourishment problems in other districts of Karnataka and introduce eggs as part of the midday meals.
But this pilot study, or even the inclusion of eggs in midday meals, met with stiff opposition in Karnataka, right? With many religious and political leaders criticizing the government for this.
Yes, Utsa, you're right. There was a lot of criticism, actually, stiff criticism, especially from the religious mutts, the Lingayat seers, and also from the Jain community, from the Brahmin community, because they felt that, it causes inequality. Because only when there are other vegetarian consuming students as well. So you must also take care of their sentiments. At the same time, even Akshaya Patra, which also serves midday meals, and that's an NGO, and also we have Adamya Chetana, which also serves midday meals. So they said that, we cannot introduce eggs as part of our midday meals. So even they vehemently oppose, especially Tejasvi Anantkumar, who's a state BJP vice president, and she is the founder of this NGO, Adamya Chetana, which serves midday meals in a lot of government schools. So even till date, she is not okay with the initiative of serving midday meals. So instead, what they say is, prefer Sattvic food, where it's more nutrition based than eggs, is what they say, like, sprouts and other beans and all of that. So they have an alternative nutrition menu altogether, which does not include eggs. That's when the government thought, so we will also introduce bananas and chikkis so that those who do not prefer eggs can definitely have an alternative that's, like a banana or a chikki, which they feel is vegetarian enough. So that's the reason, then I think now with the response, I think a lot of these criticisms have been put to rest, where the kids have actually evidently shown what they prefer. Where we have reported on Sunday that, 80% of kids in government schools prefer eggs.
Okay, so certain NGOs are supplying midday meals to the government and government aided schools, and they don't include eggs. But as we have been discussing, the response in schools where eggs are served showed a positive response from students. So, Sanath, considering that, can't the government replace these NGOs and start serving the meals itself?
So, the midday meals are served in two different ways. One, where there's already a centrally cooked kitchen where the government have appointed cooks and where they cook, and they can, the menus of their interest, or to the left to the discretion of the school authorities. Whereas in certain areas or in certain regions where government does not have the wherewithal to serve the food, they would have roped in NGOs and other organizations to do it. That's where in Bangalore most of the midday meals are served by Akshaya Patra Foundation. The organizations have a centrally cooked kitchen and they distribute food to a large extent to lakhs of students because of their bandwidth and also because of the resources they have. So that's why, they have been given the task to do. But government taking over it and, if they want to replace or substitute, that's the government's call. But still, they're not still clear on whether they want to do it or not. So as of now, they're good to do with, their centrally run kitchens in certain schools, and they're leaving the foundations to do their own job. So we don't see like any intervention or anything as of now yet.
Right. Well, despite the opposition, the government went ahead with the study and then implemented eggs in all districts, which were preferred by the students. So can you tell us how it may impact the Karnataka government's policies regarding the scheme?
So, the government is working on a lot of studies. Let's call it the supplementary nutrition food, which includes eggs, bananas, and chikkis. how the supplementary nutrition food has become a major intervention in different factors. For example, how it has enhanced the attendance of students, how it has improved their health. So the government is yet to fully do a conclusive study on these two factors, because there could be also other interventions, say, such as your textbooks, your uniforms, because of which attendance can increase. However, what we have also reported earlier is, when I spoke to the midday meals department of Karnataka government, so they said that they might extend the supplementary nutrition food even to high class students. Until now, it was just from, say, class 1 to class 8. So class 9 and 10 were not included. And they might bring up in the pre-budget meeting with the state government, where they might propose to expand this in 9th and 10th standards as well. It might impact the policy where, considering a very positive, optimistic response, they might extend this.
And Sanath, what kind of challenges Karnataka may face if they want to or try to expand the scope of this?
So, the challenges are plenty actually, Utsa. When we spoke to some of the government school teachers in certain districts like, Belgaum or Chitradurga for that matter, one of the major concern is the price of the eggs. Because currently the government, what they have fixed is ₹6 for one student, where it includes, say, like ₹4 for the egg and 1.5 for peeling the egg and 1.5 for boiling the egg. So within ₹6 for one student, you will have to serve the egg is what the government has fixed. But the reality is totally opposite to this, because just recently, when government officials conducted surprise inspections at certain schools, they found out that eggs are not being distributed to the fullest potential. This is because of the high rate of eggs. The school authorities are not able to manage the finances. And second thing is also one of the major challenges is also managing the finances, managing logistics, because teachers are in the forefront of implementing this. They say, we are not able to take a lot of burden. It's like overburdening us, and they're not able to teach. So the main job is to teach. But then almost one day of their entire, day actually goes on to, where they go to the bank, withdraw the money and draft a check, and that's how they procure. So almost one day goes off in managing the entire finance for the scheme. And also third important thing is the non-implementation of eggs in certain schools, where NGOs such as Akshay Patra, Adamya Chaitanya, and all the religious mutts, where there are no eggs being distributed. So this is where I think a major challenge also lies, because there might be students who want eggs, but they are being deprived because of certain reasons. So I think this is a challenge, but the government is saying that they're working on this to see that all Karnataka students receive this supplementary nutrition food, and to enhance attendance and also to improve their health.
And in the end, we talk about Jadavpur University professor Ambikesh Mahapatra, who was arrested in 2012 for allegedly forwarding a cartoon of Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee and Trinamool Congress leader Mukul Roy. And after 10 years, on January 18th, he was finally acquitted by the Alipur District Court. But according to Mahapatra, justice was served 10 years too late. The Indian Express's Sweety Kumari joins us in the segment to talk about his arrest, why this cartoon was controversial, and why the case has dragged on for this long. So to begin with, Sweety, can you give us some political context about the cartoon in question? We know that it featured West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee and TMC leader Mukul Roy, who was made the Union Railway Minister around the time of the cartoon, right?
Yeah, so basically, Mahapatra had shared a cartoon sequel based on Satyajit Ray's famous movie we all know, Sonar Kella, after Mukul Roy was made the Union Railway Minister, replacing Dinesh Trivedi. Dinesh Trivedi was the railway minister during Manmohan Singh's regime, and he had presented a railway budget to which Mamata Banerjee was not very happy about the railway budget, and she had some objections to that. And we all know that Mamata Banerjee is short-tempered, so she had decided to change the railway minister. It was actually an unprecedented incident in a sense that when the railway budget was presented, Railway Minister was Dinesh Trivedi, but when the railway budget was passed in the parliament, the minister had changed and the portfolio was given to Mukul Roy.
Okay, so now that we understand the political context, let's talk about the cartoon. Honestly, it seems pretty harmless at first glance. It almost seems like a political meme. So why is it so controversial?
Yeah. So basically, technically, it's a collage cartoon where you can identify the cartoon. They have the faces of the famous whoever is being targeted or whatever. So basically the cartoon faces are there and they write dialogues based on inspired by some movies. And I was speaking to one of the cartoonists and he was telling me about this case and he was telling me that basically we call it a collage cartoon. So he had shared a collage cartoon related to Mukul Roy, Mamata Banerjee and Dinesh Trivedi after the railway budget incident had happened and which had not gone well with the TMC supporters, so to say. And then we all know what happened.
Right. So let's get into the night of his arrest. You've spoken to Mahapatra. How does he describe that fateful night?
Yes, so it was very interesting and everybody was talking about that incident of railway minister being changed. So he had received this cartoon from some of his friends and he had shared the same on a group email to his friends. So after he shared on April 12, 2012, he is basically a resident of South suburban area and he was housing secretary of his society. It was a routine for him to come from college and sit in his housing society for some good hours. So that day he got late for extra classes and by the time he returned, 60 to 70 people had already gathered inside his campus and they were waiting for him at the secretary office. And because he got really late and he had basically reached his society by around 8 to 9 p.m. So he decided to head towards his home directly and not going to the society office. So when he was walking towards his apartment, some good group of people on bike, as he was speaking to Express, he recalled that night and he was telling me that so they did not know him personally. They could not identify that, okay, he is Ambikesh Mahapatra. So what they did was, he was having a jhola and typical professor look. So they guessed it and they asked him whether he was Ambikesh Mahapatra. To which Ambikesh definitely said yes, and he was then forced to go to the society's office. And he said that he was made to sit on a chair where, he was slapped, he was kicked, he was abused verbally, and they physically assaulted him and then made him sign on a white paper saying that he's a CPM worker, this and that. And then, he was picked up by the police. He was taken to East Jadavpur police station where the police said that a complaint was filed and he was arrested. And since then, he had been roaming from courtroom to his house, fighting this legal battle for long, though he was bailed out the very next day. TMC supporters had definitely protested and in fact state government had also opposed his bail petition, but he was released on bail the next day.
Okay. And Sweety, it's been more than 10 years since his arrest now. And as you said, in the last decade or so, Mahapatra has fought legal battle after legal battle. So why is he being acquitted only now?
Now, it's said Mahapatra had earlier approached Calcutta High Court. Basically, he was arrested under Section 66. Subsection A and B of Information and Technology Act, which was struck down by Supreme Court in 2015. So Mahapatra had earlier approached the Calcutta High Court, which had asked him to approach the lower court instead, to quash the FIR and quash the case. On September 14, 2021, the Chief Judicial Magistrate Court in Alipur had discharged him from the case on the ground that the Supreme Court had struck down the section in 2015. But though the section was struck down and the CJM court, however, did not discharge him completely because, a fresh plea was filed that because this section 66A of Information and Technology Act has been struck down by the Supreme Court. So the case was likely to be started against him under section 500, which is defamation, and 509, which is basically, word, gesture or act intended to outrage woman's modesty. So because of which the CJM court had not fully discharged him from the case. On January 18, the additional session judge of South Chobis Pargana court set aside the earlier CJM's order and discharged him from the case and the bail bond. So that is how from 2012 to 2023 he had been fighting.
Right, so it's clear that it's been a long and hard journey to his acquittal. And Sweetie, Mahapatra's arrest sparked a major political storm in West Bengal, right? In fact, to this day, the opposition in West Bengal has criticized the TMC over the issue. How has the opposition reacted to his acquittal?
There were massive protests when Ambikesh Mahapatra was arrested because, many believe that his political inclination is towards the left ideologies. So there were a lot of CPIM supporters who had shared it on various platforms and had hit streets in support of him. BJP wasn't that powerful in Bengal then, so they didn't have this phase then. So in Bengal, but BJP was also on the same line and protesting his arrest. Now the interesting thing is, now that he has been acquitted, opposition parties have again started targeting the ruling Trinamool Congress. So CPIM leader Sujan Chakravarti has questioned the TMC again, and they have been saying this from very beginning since 2012 after his arrest. And I'll quote him that Chakrabarti said, TMC government doesn't believe in democracy. They want people to walk with their heads down. TMC doesn't believe in human rights. Such harsh words have been used by CPIM after he was acquitted. Talking about BJP has clearly demanded an apology from Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee because the cartoon was about him, and Mahapatra had told and has publicly said a lot of time that he was beaten up and physically assaulted, harassed by Trinamool supporters. So BJP has been demanding CM's apology because they feel that now that the case is over, he has been discharged and he has gone through so much that at least he's deserved this.
And what does the TMC have to say about the acquittal?
Talking about Trinamool Congress, they have been talking about Ambikesh Mahapatra's political affiliation more than the case. Recently, Trinamool leader parliamentarian Chogoto Roy said, whether a reasonable restriction should be there or not when we talk of freedom of speech is a vast subject. And, there have been many cases in Supreme Court and various courts where challenging freedom of speech in different ways. Now, why this case went on for so long is related to the judiciary that TMC is claiming, and that his party Trinamool Congress or the state government has nothing to do with it. So that has been the stand of Trinamool Congress.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was hosted by me, Rahel Philipose, and written and produced by Utsa Sarmin with the help of me, Rahel Philipose, and Shashank Bhargava. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.